Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a topic that feels uh, very local, a specific wildlife conflict happening across Japan.
Right.
But it holds this, universal resonance for anyone grappling with how humans and large predators can share the landscape.
Hmm.
We're looking at the escalating crisis involving bears, and we're evaluating a really unexpected, almost high-tech solution using targeted sound.
Using sound to manage coexistence.
So we dug into the reports, and they detailed just how big this problem has gotten. The scale is, it's genuinely alarming.
Especially the friend lines.
Exactly. While annual crop damage is a consistent issue, it's always hovering around, 1,000 cases.
But the real measure, the visceral one, is the injury rate.
That's it. Human injuries have approximately doubled over the last decade.
And that's according to the Environment Ministry's own data from just this year.
That doubling is just a critical and honestly a tragic metric.
It is, and it tells us instantly that the traditional measures, fencing, some limited culling, physical barriers, they're just not sufficient anymore. They can't stem the tide.
So this deep dive is really dedicated to finding that sustainable, non-lethal path forward.
Focusing squarely on the potential of acoustic science.
Yeah.
Or, sound to control bear behavior.
So why sound? To an outside observer, that seems like such a soft power solution to a very hard, very physical problem.
Well, the strength of the approach is rooted entirely in the bear's biology. The sources show that researchers are leveraging the fact that bears have this highly developed, finely tuned hearing.
Okay.
They react sensitively, and more importantly, predictably, to specific acoustic inputs.
Like what?
Whether that's the crack of a human warning alarm or specific engineered artificial frequencies. So this isn't just about making noise.
Right.
It's about analyzing the precise science behind leveraging the bear's own senses to define a nonviolent boundary.
Before we get into the science of the solution, let's meet the primary players in this ongoing crisis.
Good idea.
Because we're dealing with two distinct species, and it depends on where you are in Japan.
That's right. And understanding their size and their behavior, that really defines the scale of the challenge in the different regions.
So first, you have the Tsukino waguma, known in English as the Asiatic black bear.
Mm-hmm.
They're found across the main island of Honshu and also on Shikoku and Kyushu.
They're the smaller of the two.
Much smaller, yeah. Generally measuring about 120 to 150 centimeters. And they're highly adept at climbing trees, which really reflects their broad, omnivorous diet.
Then you head north to Hokkaido, and you encounter the much larger higuma,
The brown bear.
the brown bear. And these are the true giants of the equation.
I've seen them described as a very fast, very powerful fridge with 4 legs.
That's not a bad description. They can range from 180 up to 250 centimeters.
Wow.
They need much larger territories. And their diet is more varied, too. They're consuming fish, small animals, so their movements are often tied to river systems as well as the forests.
And their activity patterns are key, right, to
Yeah.
understanding the danger window.
Absolutely.
While both species are generally nocturnal, the sources all stress that their activity shifts, and it shifts dramatically to daytime during the spring and especially in the autumn.
That autumn shift is the problem window. It's everything. They become aggressive food seekers.
Hyperphagic, I think is the term.
Exactly. They're packing on weight before hibernation, and this is when they are most likely to risk an interaction with human infrastructure.
Because the caloric payoff is just too high to ignore.
Too high to ignore.
Okay, so now let's talk about their hidden advantage, their hearing. What do they hear? And maybe more importantly, what do they fear in the soundscape?
Right, so we need to understand their acoustics. Their auditory frequency range is incredibly substantial. It stands from a deep rumble at 200 hertz all the way up to a high whine at 10 kilohertz.
Can you put that in perspective for us?
Sure. 200 hertz is roughly the frequency of a large truck idling nearby, while 10 kilohertz is a high-pitched whine, far, far above the highest notes in most human conversation.
That's a huge spectrum. So if they can hear so well, why hasn't all the human noise pollution, the sounds of modern society, already served as a deterrent?
That is a brilliant question.
Are we just inadvertently teaching them to ignore us?
You've just gotten right to the heart of the habituation problem, which we'll definitely get to later. But first, let's look at what they react to.
Okay.
They react strongly to the range of human voices. That's typically 250 to 4,000 hertz. And they are exceptionally sensitive to intense, sharp noises.
Like alarms or thunder.
Exactly. Warning sounds, thunder, which occupy that 1,000 to 8,000 hertz range. The natural world influences them profoundly,
So they're acutely aware of changes.
acutely aware of changes in their acoustic environment. So the problem isn't that they can't hear us, it's that the sounds we make are no longer consistently signaling danger.
That's a crucial distinction. So it means the bears are not just moving into empty space.
They're moving into silent space.
What does this all mean? The sources point clearly to these structural reasons for the expansion, and it moves beyond simple wildlife management, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It moves right into human societal failures. The crisis is like an environmental mirror,
Reflecting what?
reflecting fundamental changes in Japanese land use and demographics. The primary driver is a socioeconomic shift known as Satoyama abandonment.
And Satoyama, for those who are unfamiliar, that refers to the sort of semi-natural farmlands and mountain forests that historically buffered human settlements.
Direct. And due to rural depopulation, the abandonment of these mountainous farmlands is creating a geographical vacuum, but also an acoustic one.
Right. It's not just that the people are gone.
It's that the soundscape of human life is gone.
The low-level, pervasive sounds of active cultivation.
Chainsaws, talking, farm machinery, radios, all of it. It's gone. And that creates a silent corridor, which basically invites the bears closer.
That is a potent correlation, and the data backs this up regionally, doesn't it?
It really does. Hokkaido University research from last year showed that the area of abandoned farmland in Hokkaido increased by approximately 30% between 2000 and 2020.
And that maps directly onto the rise in bear appearances.
A direct correlation. The habitat simply migrated closer to our population centers, and that traditional acoustic barrier was eliminated.
And to make the deal even sweeter for the bears, we changed our land use to provide them with high-calorie attractants.
Yes, the expansion of orchards and nut forests. These highly concentrated food sources act like a neon sign, drawing bears closer than they ever would have ventured historically.
You see that in the agricultural data.
You do. Surveys in Nagano Prefecture show annual damage rates in fruit orchards reaching up to 12% in some areas.
That's a massive, reliable food source. It just outweighs the perceived risk of entering a village.
Completely.
And the third structural cause, one that we see more and more in global predator conflicts, is climate change.
The data suggests that climate change introduces this massive unpredictability to their natural food cycle. Well, reduced snow accumulation changes their hibernation patterns, and erratic weather alters the growth and availability of spring fruits.
So it creates food shortages in their normal foraging area.
Exactly, which forces them to push past traditional boundaries and enter villages in search of reliable calories.
And the regional damage snapshot really drives home how urgent this need for sophisticated intervention is.
It does.
Looking at the 2020 to 2024 period, Hokkaido is reporting 320 annual incidents, substantial crop damage, and 5 human injuries.
But look at a place like Nagano Prefecture. It's a smaller scale, but it's just as intense.
Right. 150 incidents, 12% crop damage, 2 human injuries in that same time frame. So if these structural changes are permanent,
Which they seem to be.
then simply reacting to incursions with traditional methods, it just seems futile.
Which brings us to the necessity of effective, scalable, and non-lethal intervention. This is why researchers pivoted to this core solution of using sound to manage behavior,
You had to figure out what worked.
and crucially, how to prevent the bearers from simply getting used to it.
And we have clear data on a sound efficacy scale. It's fascinating how the bear's reaction is proportional to the perceived threat, not just the volume.
Exactly. The experiments show this really clear gradient. A simple whistle.
Results in just a light avoidance action, a momentary pause.
That's it. But if you introduce the human voice, that escalates to a medium avoidance. It suggests a higher, though still, mild risk.
But the most powerful, immediate deterrent.
A sharp, unexpected noise, like firecrackers or explosions. That reliably causes strong, immediate flight behavior.
So that proves the concept of acoustic deterrence works. But like you said, you can't set off firecrackers in a town center.
No.
And that's where the high-tech options like high-frequency electronic tones came into play, right?
They did. Researchers focused on the high end of the bear's hearing spectrum, that 8 to 10 kilohertz range, to induce experimental avoidance. But the problem, as you hinted at earlier, is habituation.
They just get used to it.
If the sound is predictable and has no actual consequence attached, the bear learns to dismiss it very quickly. The Kyushu electronic tone trial proved this.
What were the results there?
Short-term deterrence, yes, followed by confirmed long-term habituation. That high-pitched whine just became background noise within a few months.
So the effectiveness isn't just about the volume or the frequency, it's about timing and intelligence.
Precisely. If a noise means nothing, it is ignored. If a noise reliably precedes a human presence or some negative interaction, the bear learns to avoid the noise itself
So how did the researchers introduce that intelligence?
by integrating artificial intelligence. The Tohoku AI speaker trial, which ran from 2020 to 2023, was a complete game changer because it moved past static deterrents.
It wasn't just making a noise on a timer.
Not at all. It used AI analysis to track behavior patterns. It could distinguish a bear foraging safely from one that's actively approaching a human structure.
And only then would it issue a warning.
A tailored warning before the intrusion.
So the AI is essentially learning the difference between a safe acoustic environment and a threat environment, and it's communicating that boundary to the bear proactively.
Precisely. This proactive approach, anticipating movement based on behavioral models, not just reacting to a bear's presence, achieved a 65% success rate in prevention.
Because the sounds weren't random.
They were part of a learned consequence.
That is the necessary shift. So what does this look like in current application strategies on the ground today?
Today, we see these really sophisticated sensor systems. The first strategy is sensor link warning sounds.
Meaning the sound isn't always on.
Right, it only engages when the threat is imminent. It's automatic sound generation upon detection, which prompts immediate avoidance before damage can occur.
And what about maintaining that overall acoustic buffer zone, making sure that Satoyama vacuum isn't too enticing?
That's the second strategy, periodic patrol sounds. This involves acoustic devices that transmit sounds. Sometimes it's tailored human voice recordings combined with electronic tones.
To signal human presence.
And effectively reduce the intent to intrude. It's about projecting the acoustic fingerprint of human life, even if people aren't physically there 204/7.
And this dual approach is being implemented now in places like Nagano and Hokkaido.
It is, using combinations of human voice and electronic tones, especially for night patrols.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material seems to argue that effective countermeasures have to achieve a goal far greater than just simple extermination.
Oh, absolutely. This is fundamentally a question of achieving a functional coexistence with wildlife in these shared landscapes.
The technology is certainly accelerating that goal. We talked about AI. How is drone integration changing the scalability of this acoustic response?
The systems are becoming so much smarter and more adaptable. AI and drone integration means that the AI analysis can track bear behavior patterns across wide, inaccessible mountainous terrain.
And then the drones, fitted with these acoustic devices, can be deployed for broad area patrols.
Tailoring the acoustic response to specific zones. Hokkaido, for instance, introduced this system back in 2020. It lets managers maintain that acoustic boundary without constant human presence in high-risk areas.
This raises an important question then. Is Japan pioneering this, or is this concept of acoustic management working elsewhere?
We see parallel efforts globally, which really confirms the efficacy of non-lethal acoustic management.
Like where?
In the U.S., California, where conflicts with black bears are common, they utilize electronic sounds carefully combined with human voices for intrusion prevention around residential areas and campsites.
In Canada, too, right?
Similarly, in Canada, specifically British Columbia, they employ sophisticated non-lethal acoustic management very successfully to reduce crop damage caused by bears. And they do it without resorting to lethal removal.
So the global consensus is shifting away from that reactive lethal control and toward this integrated nonviolent communication through sound.
Which leads us to the ultimate ethical goal the researchers identified. The sources conclude that sound-based solutions are powerful because they are non-lethal and effective. They act as a means of control through resonance and learned avoidance, rather than through violence or injury.
It's about conditioning a safe, necessary distance.
That's all it is.
And this ambition culminates in a concept that moves far beyond just blasting an alarm. They call it acoustic landscape design.
Onkyo Kaikan design.
So what does creating a sound culture mean in practice?
It means moving past static alarms toward a dynamic, integrated acoustic environment. The system integrates region-specific ambient sounds.
Like the sound of a farming tractor during the day.
Or traditional Japanese festival music near villages, alongside seasonal rhythms. This creates a recognized, predictable sound culture.
So the system knows the difference between the sound of human life that signals safety and the sudden, tailored noise that signals danger, you are too close.
Exactly. When the AI learns the bear's behavior and dynamically links its responses to this established sound culture, sound evolves. It becomes a coexistence interface.
It doesn't just warn, it communicates.
It helps the bear understand the boundaries based on its own highly tuned senses. And that restores harmony by ensuring the bear learns to avoid conflict zones naturally.
Which reduces the need for costly physical barriers or, lethal intervention.
Exactly.
That's a significant leap in environmental ethics, isn't it? Leveraging technology to define a safer, non-lethal boundary for both humans and wildlife.
It's an acknowledgement that the problems we created through our own structural changes, depopulation, climate change, land use, can be managed with thoughtful, technologically aided environmental design.
It seems like the sources conclude that future sound policy must merge that scientific knowledge with a kind of cultural sensitivity.
It has to.
Yeah.
It's about leveraging the best data on bear behavior to design an ecosystem that naturally fosters avoidance, rather than just relying on conflict after the fact.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We started with the startling realization that the bear crisis in Japan really reflects these deep structural human issues,
Rural abandonment, climate disruption, land use changes.
all actively pulling wildlife toward human settlements. And we've learned that sound provides this ethical, data-backed path forward.
Using the bear's own acute senses to manage their behavior non-lethally.
The evolution from simple firecrackers to the sophisticated AI-driven acoustic landscape design frames sound not as a weapon, but as a communication tool.
It's a way to maintain the necessary distance for survival, and it ensures that human progress doesn't automatically necessitate wildlife removal.
We've learned that the future is about acoustic landscape design using intelligence and environmental context to define non-lethal boundaries. So if we can use sound to communicate clearly to a bear, you are entering a high-risk zone, where else could this concept of acoustic environmental ethics be applied?
That's a great question.
Could it be used to manage noise pollution in urban-human conflicts, or in defining territories for threatened marine ecosystems, or even in managing public spaces to naturally disperse crowds without physical force? Something to mull over as you go about your day.